I wish I never went to the bathroom. What I saw in there will leave me terrified for the rest of my life. It has been over a week since I last left the apartment. I was meant to return to work the other day, but I've been avoiding my boss's calls. She's out there now, watching me. I can see her through the window. She'll leave soon, but then she'll be back tomorrow. If not tomorrow, then the day after that. Same time. Same place. Always watching. It started in the bathroom of a McDonald's just down the road from where I work. It had been a long shift and I had to stay behind 2 hours as a coworker called in sick. My legs were tired from standing all day and my eyes were drooping from exhaustion. I washed my hands at the sink. The mirror reflected my awful features. Bags under the eyes. Acne scarring on my face. I felt icky. "What are you doing here?" A woman called from behind me. I flicked my hands in the sink to quickly dry them as I turned to face her. "Excuse me," she continued, "what are you doing in here?" In front of me was a 40-something-year-old woman. Blonde hair and wearing sunglasses indoors. She looked furious. "Just washing my hands," I said. "You are a man," she said. "I'm not." "What are you doing in the female bathroom, you freak?" She raised her voice over mine. "I'm just using the toilet." The woman pulled out her phone and, presumably, started recording me. This pervert is in the ladies' bathroom checking on women. I lifted my hand up to block my face from the camera and walked brusquely out into the restaurant. I could hear the woman's heavy footfalls trail behind me. "Look at this groomer walking off now, he's been called out," she said. I walked up to the front counter. No doubt she was there too. A member of staff was standing there putting an order together. "Hey," I leaned over, "can you stop her?" "Oh yeah. Call the cops. We'll see what they have to say when they arrive," she said behind me. "Sorry ma'am?" the staff member said. "What's going on here?" "I don't know," I said. "I'm just trying to use the bathroom and she's harassing me." "Go on. Call them. They'll kick this freak out." "Ma'am," the worker said to her, "I'm going to have to ask you to stop or leave." "Stop what?" she said. "I'm just calling out this pedophile so they'll stop creeping on little girls." The worker sighed. "I'll just call the cops." "Yeah, they'll get this sicko out of here," she said. I sighed. "You know what, I'll just go." "Are you sure, ma'am?" the worker said. "Ma'am?" the woman said, "That's a dude." "Yeah, I just needed the toilet anyway," I said. "I don't want to make a fuss." "Run away," she said. "Run away like the freak you are." Apart from the shouting woman, the place was completely silent as every bystander watched the situation unfold. I pulled my hoodie over my head and walked out the building as fast as I could. She followed. I walked across the McDonald's parking lot over to the supermarket next to me where I parked my car. The entire time, the heckler followed me, her phone still up and recording. I tried to ignore her as she kept screaming absurd shit over and over. It didn't take long to make it back to the car. I jumped in and locked the door. The woman pulled the handle as soon as it clicked. Luckily, she was too slow. My hands choked the wheel as the adrenaline started to fade. I didn't realize how fast my heart was beating until it began to slow. She stood outside the window still filming and shouting her obscenities as I got control of my breathing. After a minute, I started the car and reversed out of the space. She followed, still recording from the window. Once on the road, I put it into drive and sped out of the parking lot. I saw her standing in the rearview mirror, phone in hand, still screaming. A day later, the experience still left a mark on me. I dreamed about it overnight. Her face was vivid in my mind. All day I was filled with regret that I didn't let the police take care of it and hopefully get the woman taken away. Everything I didn't say to her floated in my head. I noticed it first when I took my dog out for a walk. A banged up blue Chevrolet. Must have been from the 70s. The paint was peeling, replaced with rust. I didn't get a good look in from across the street. The glare from the sun was too strong. But it left an impression on me. I'd never seen a vehicle so distinct on this street before. Throughout the day, I kept looking out the window. The car was still there. Down the road. I couldn't make out any features from the distance, but there was someone sitting in the driver's seat. It was freaking me out. I closed all the blinds in my apartment and tried to put it out of my mind for the time being. I was working the next day. It was at a cafe franchise in the same complex as the McDonald's. Most of my shift was spent making coffee and wiping down tables. The same old shit every day. Customers ranged from okay to horrible. I was just happy to get a paycheck. We closed later than most cafes at around 10 p.m., though we were usually out of there by 10:45 p.m. I noticed it when mopping the front of house. It wasn't so easy to see in the dark of night, but there was a blue Chevrolet, same model, same rusted coat, in the parking lot just outside the store. Again, I couldn't see the person sitting in the driver's seat, so I wandered out back and checked the cameras. Also not good enough, even when zoomed in. My coworker kept asking if I was okay. Even though he tried to hide it, he was clearly annoyed that I was slowing down the clothes for no reason. I got on with mopping, but kept my eye on the parking lot. By the time we got out, the car was gone. It was back outside the apartment the next day. The car would arrive at around 10 a.m. and leave at 9 p.m. A few times throughout the day, it would leave and then come back an hour or so later. I could see the person sitting there for hours and hours. But I didn't want to confront them out of fear of what they might do. When I went in for my next shift, my coworkers were all staring at me. I greeted them with a good afternoon, but everyone returned it with a harsh glare. As I was stuffing my bag into a locker in the back office, the store phone began ringing. My other coworker in the back quickly shuffled out of there, ignoring the ringing. After a couple of seconds, it stopped. I closed the locker and put the key into my trouser pocket. The phone began ringing again. No one from front came out back. It was company policy that the phone must be picked up, but I wasn't to start my shift for another 5 minutes. I sat down at the office and listened to it ring until it eventually stopped. 10 seconds hadn't passed before the phone started to ring again. I picked it up. No caller ID was displayed on the screen. "You've reached." "Who is this?" A woman's voice commanded on the other end. Is this Amy?" I was shocked into silence for a moment. "How do you know me?" "What's your real name?" "What?" "You need to stop playing dress up, it doesn't suit you well." "Who is this?" I looked at the monitor and saw the blue Chevrolet parked outside. "Is that you following me?" I asked. "Stop pretending to be a woman, then I'll leave you alone." She hung up. I watched the Chevrolet pull out of the space and exit the parking lot on the monitor. I didn't see her again all day. When I got home after closing, a notification appeared from Facebook Messenger. It was a random account, no photo, fake name, requesting to DM me. I opened their request. "Hey, you don't know me, but I've been following this random page for a while. A handful of people are sharing your photos and private information around. Sorry you had to find out this way." They attached screenshots of posts from this group. All of them had my photos, ripped from my Facebook and Instagram accounts, posted along with disparaging comments and personal information. One of the posts even shared my address and workplace. Some screenshots of comments showed people taking glee in the idea of hurting me. All of them made fun of how I looked, picking apart all my insecurities one by one. "He's too tall. Look at those big hands. Why is he caked in makeup in every photo?" The anonymous account linked the group, but it was private. I called in sick the next day and took everything I had seen to the police. I told a detective about the Chevrolet, the online posts, the woman in the McDonald's. Everything. I printed off the screenshots, I gave them the link to the account, I noted the reg number of the car. All the detective did was assure me everything was going to be okay and made a report. Although the lack of immediate action was concerning. I got home 2 hours later. The car was parked up on the same spot it had occupied for days. I called the police then, wanting to make sure a tangible incident report was made, hopefully creating a paper trail if it ever escalated. However, before the cops could arrive, the car was gone. They somehow knew the police were coming. I made my report to the officers and they scolded me for wasting their time before driving off. When I got into work the next day, my manager pulled me aside before I started my shift. He sat me down next to him in the office. "We've been getting reports," he said, "from employees here in head office of someone harassing everyone. And they keep naming you. I just want to make sure everything's okay and know if I can do anything to help." "What?" I was taken aback. "What about the head office?" "Well," he said, "HR have been getting floods of calls from no-caller ID numbers and email spam to them. It's clear they're getting put into spam databases and stuff. We've had to turn the phone off here because people keep calling at all hours of the day. Head office have made reports to the police but they're still investigating and want to make sure we give you the proper support." My heart sank. Everyone in the store had heard the women's rants. Even the middle management that know of me through the paperwork they receive. All of them know the embarrassing comments some random woman made about me. All of them knew I was being stalked. The surveillance monitors were open on the desk. I looked up at them and saw the blue Chevrolet was in the parking lot. Something broke. I got up and walked out the door. My manager called after me, though I can't recall his words. There was a sizable chunk of concrete broken off the sidewalk just outside. I took it in my hand and made for the car. I got a close look at the driver. The same blonde, 40-something woman that had harassed me in the McDonald's. She saw me coming and immediately started the ignition and drove for the exit. "Leave me the fuck alone," I screamed. I arced my arm. The concrete left my palm and flew towards the Chevrolet. It missed the roof by a few inches and kept flying until it hit a black BMW parked behind it. The concrete broke in half as it left a massive crack on the windscreen. I fell to the floor. The emotions had finally hit me as the adrenaline wore off. I began crying and didn't stop for an hour. The police came. When the customer eventually came back to their car from the supermarket, he was pissed. Luckily the two officers were able to keep things relatively calm. My manager spoke for me as I sat in the cafe. The two officers came in and informed me that he wasn't pressing charges so long as I covered the damages. Even though I had little money to my name, I agreed. My manager then told me to take a couple days off and said he was there if I needed help. All my coworkers stared at me in complete shock as I left the cafe. None of them said a word. I drove home by myself. Even though he needed it, I decided not to take my dog for a walk. I didn't want to be outside by myself at that moment. Instead, I made a cup of coffee and sat by the window. The blue Chevrolet is parked down the street. There is an outbreak of smiling death syndrome at my university. I'm pretty sure it's about to get my family. When I was 10 years old, I was hauled into the principal's office for frightening the other children. They deserved it because they were taunting me. They said me and my sister were weirdos for not eating meat. I explained to them exactly why we didn't meet. Our dad is a paramedic and he got called out to an industrial accident. The food factory used steam to clean and sterilize the equipment. Someone got caught in the steamer and cooked to death. When my dad turned up, he said the smell was like boiled pork. I shouldn't really have got in trouble because I wasn't lying. Okay, so I embellished a little. I described how the eyeballs popped out and the skin was flaking off, but the bare bones of the story were correct. My dad came home that day and emptied the fridge and freezer of all the meat. He was so haunted by the smell that he would avoid barbecues and other social functions where meat was likely to be served. He would always say, "You can trust a plant. You know what you're getting. Root, stem, leaves, nuts and seeds." I was on board with our family's newfound vegetarianism, but my sister rebelled and had the occasional McDonald's. Then came mad cow disease, a big scandal in the UK in the 1990s. In short, they were feeding bits of cow to other cows, causing an infectious cannibal-like disease called bovine spongiform encephalopathy, which led to a disease called Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease when humans consumed the meat. 178 people died. One of them was a boy at our school called Lewis. My dad was Mr. I told you so. He had always been inclined to conspiracy theories, but this time he was actually right. Someone from the government appeared on TV with his 4-year-old child, telling us beef was safe while eating a burger. There are two big employers in our town, the hospital and the university. Mom also worked at the hospital where Dad was based. It was normal for people in town to be born in the hospital and go to the university. There is a great deal of pride in these two institutions. Fast forward a few years and the horse meat scandal broke. In short, they had been replacing beef with horse meat, which is taboo in the UK, but not uncommon on the European continent. Thankfully no one was hurt, except the horses of course. My dad had a field day. He was always trying, unsuccessfully, to convince his friends that nuts contained all the protein you need. For me the path of least resistance was to eat my bowl of nuts and not complain. My sister just said, "What's the difference between a horse and a cow? They both eat grass for a living." I knew Dad was ultimately just trying to keep us safe. I wouldn't want any harm to come to him, or my mom, or my sister especially. We're twins and we've always looked out for each other. I've got her back and she's got mine. Now my sister and I go to the prestigious local university and live at home with Mom and Dad. It's only half the experience, but we're saving a lot of money. I'm an anthropology major and my sister studies English. We run in different social circles and don't hang out much. I've made a lot of friends in my first year. We hang out a lot in the canteen because it's subsidized and none of us have any money. Even the beer is subsidized. My vegetarianism isn't a big deal here because I seem quite tame in comparison to the vegans. Two of my friends have been ill with suspected meningitis, and because I'm not allowed to visit them, I asked my mom if she could check in on them at the hospital and let me know they're okay. I begged her for a week, but she always found reasons why she couldn't see them. Eventually she told me that they both seemed fine. They were sat up in bed, though supported by a lot of pillows, and they were both laughing. So they must have been having a good time. I suspect you'll be able to visit them soon. Then we got confirmation that it was meningitis and everyone at the university was put on a course of preventative medicine. Mom warned us not to go hooking up with people because you could get it from kissing. Fat chance of that when I live at home with my parents. Then, suddenly and without any warning, we were informed that our friends had died. In fact, there were other students that I didn't know who had also caught meningitis, some of whom had also died while others were fighting for their lives. Rumors spread like wildfire and a town meeting was called. The collective wisdom of the people was aired. Then my dad, the conspiracy nut, got up and spoke. "We've seen this before. With mad cow disease and then the horse meat scandal. I'm telling you, it's in the food. The government are lying to us." Dad was shouted down. People were concerned for the young people and needed real solutions, not his ravings. I was so embarrassed to be seen with him. When we got home, he was pacing up and down the kitchen muttering to himself. No one wants to besmirch the good name of the infallible university or the flawless hospital. The mayor's on the board of both and he likes a kickback. I've seen them taking the bags out back from the incinerator. Everyone wants to make a quick buck. I went to bed on an empty stomach. I couldn't stand to be around my dad, especially now another friend had been taken ill. I did my usual trick of begging Mom for updates, which again she was reluctant to give. I threw myself into study by way of a distraction. Anthropology majors like myself like to study Papua New Guinea a lot because of the abundance of tribes. I had decided I wanted to do my thesis on one of these tribes. I couldn't afford to travel there myself, so naturally I hit the library and spent countless hours lost down rabbit holes on the internet. Obviously, I was macabrely drawn to the stories about cannibalism. When my mom failed to bring me news about my friend, me and a few of my classmates hatched a plan to find them ourselves in the hospital. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of students had been trying to get in and talk to their friends. We were receiving no news from them. It didn't make sense. Surely, they could send us messages. We stole some lab coats and high-visibility vests and marched straight through the front door. We found them eventually. Wards and wards full of students. They were lethargic and couldn't sit up unassisted. The worst part of this was the maniacal laughter that piped out from them. A deafening cacophony. The nurses told us it was completely involuntary, and got worse just before they died. We managed to take a Polaroid of one of our friends as evidence he was still alive. We returned to the university canteen to hash out next steps. I snacked on my nuts while everyone else had lasagna. I was so tired from all the day's events. I hadn't seen my sister in weeks. She was probably off investigating with her own friends. And that's when the argument started. I honestly didn't know the answer, so I asked my friends what type of meat is in lasagna. "It's beef." "Well, sometimes it's beef and pork, sometimes it's horse." Everybody laughed. One of my friends, Chris, said he was going to go and ask the canteen. We were watching from a distance sniggering. The dinner canteen worker looked at Chris askew. She answered and then left in a hurry. He came back and he said, as we all suspected, "It's horse meat." Everyone laughed again, but the consensus was that it must contain some pork because it tasted porky. We agreed to meet back in the morning. I went to the library to study. I learned about people in Papua New Guinea who got a disease called kuru, or smiling death syndrome, which was ultimately caused by cannibalism. My mind made an almost unutterable connection. What was really in that lasagna? The next morning, we all met up at the canteen. Everyone except Chris, that is. A few people had messaged him, but he wasn't messaging back. He probably slept in. Everyone was joshing each other as per usual. Some students on a separate table were arguing over their breakfast. All I'm saying is that's some funny looking bacon. Yeah, what part of the pig is that? I told my friends what I suspected was in the lasagna. I knew it wouldn't get a great reception. It was disgusting and absurd. But the facts were undeniable. Then we got a group message from Chris. "Friends, I have been detained. They say I know too much. They say I will be formally questioned at the station where presumably they will take my phone. I'm in the back of the police van now. They say people have jobs and families to support. It doesn't make any sense. They say the university and the hospital cannot fall into disrepute. That they are getting too much heat for the current outbreak of meningitis. The university is being accused of not doing enough to stop its spread and the hospital of not doing enough to treat the students. They mentioned the canteen and me asking too many questions. We were all in agreement that the canteen was sourcing meat from the hospital and the students did not in fact have meningitis. I ran home to tell my parents. I just hoped my dad could forgive me. He was waiting for me in the kitchen when I got home. "Dad, it's in the meat. You were right. I was right again. Right again, son. Thank God we are a family of vegetarians." My face went pale. My dad said I looked like I had seen a ghost. I silently stood up and climbed the stairs. I walked across the landing and slowly pushed open the door to my sister's room. There she sat, supported by about 10 pillows, with a wide-open grin on her face. Her eyes fixed on me as she started to cackle, at first a whisper, then a deafening cacophony. I agreed to check in on my friend's cat during her holidays, but what I encountered made me flee in fear after just 5 days. My friend and I have known each other since high school. We ended up going to the same college. We moved to the same neighborhood and started working at the same place. It was all coincidental, but it allowed us to be close friends, even though we had nothing in common, but life and coincidences. At one point, about 4 years ago, she changed jobs. First, we had regular lunches, but then I also moved out of the neighborhood and into a house in the suburbs, so without daily interactions at work, without living close to each other, we just drifted apart. For a few years, we only talked on birthdays and major holidays, wishing each other well, updating each other on random life events, etc. This year, for my birthday, she wrote me and told me she's buying a house. Again, coincidentally, it was very close to where I had moved, about 10 minutes drive. She invited me to her new house party and then messaged me after thanking me for coming. A few days later, she messaged me again, and soon after, we started getting back in touch. As this was happening in mid-June, and with summer just around the corner, we didn't have time to see each other again before I went on holiday. But we were texting each other daily almost. She told me she got a cat and sent me pictures. It was a gorgeous little rescue. She was black all over, except for her paws, which were white. It looked like she was wearing shoes, so my friend named her Boots. From the pictures and videos, Boots was loving, cuddly, and sweet. So, when I came back from holiday, I didn't think twice before I agreed to stop by my friend's house every evening and look after the cat, while she went on holiday for a week, too. I even proposed to take her over at my place, but since I had a dog, and my friend didn't know how Boots would react, we agreed that I'd just drop by every night for a few hours, as my schedule allowed it. As her flight was departing before mine would have landed, we didn't manage to meet and she couldn't give me her house keys, so she gave me the code to her garage. I could very easily enter like that, and the job was simple enough. Check that the cat had sufficient dry food available, feed her a little satchel of wet food every evening, change her water, and clean her litter. I was also to spend an hour or so just cuddling or playing with her. Simple, and adorable, right? Wrong. The first night went smoothly enough. I got there at around 8:30, around Boots' dinner time. She ate her wet food really well, and then we played for a while. "What's your favorite toy, Boots?" I asked her jokingly. She looked me in the eyes, ran into the bedroom, and came back with an orange plastic mouse. I was taken aback by the cat's ability to understand my question, but I assumed my friend was talking to her all the time, and the phrase favorite toy in relation to that specific mouse had come by a few times. The cat was associating. I replaced the water and the dry food, cleaned the litter box, and then lay down on her couch to read a little. Boots came over and started making biscuits on the blanket which I used as a cover. I took some pictures and sent them to my friend, who was pleased with my service. Boots, loving all the attention, ear scratches, and sweet talk, laid on my stomach and started purring, fast asleep. "Oof, Boots, what's this smell?" I said, trying to dissipate the odor with my hand. "What a farty butthole you have, miss." "Very unbecoming for a lady," I argued. The cat meowed at me, as if to excuse herself, or protest, and then got off the couch. "Aw, come on, Bootsy." "I didn't mean it," I argued back. I put my book down and checked the time. It was well past 11 p.m., pretty late, I thought. I packed my things, messaged my friend that I was on my way, made sure the garage door closed properly, and off I went. The next night, things went just as smoothly, with a very similar routine: little food, little play, some chilling on the couch. Boots, again, came to lie down on my chest. And again, that god-awful smell. "Hey, what is this?" I reacted, trying to grab the cat and bring her closer to my nose, to see where exactly it was coming from. I didn't know whether cats needed their anal glands checked like dogs did, but I was guessing this one might. But Boots, as elusive as any cat, ran away again, meowing at me from across the room. "Fine, miss, I have to go anyway," I responded. The third night is when things got weird. That terrible smell hit me as soon as I entered the house. "Oof," I exclaimed and quickly texted my friend to see whether it was okay to stop the wet food. It smelled strongly of sulfur, like when my French bulldog eats cheese. Something needed to be done, I'd argued in the texts. This poor cat's stomach needed some sort of managing. My friend asked me if the poop is okay in the littler box, and sure enough, it was. She suggested I reduce the portion, but not worry too much about it. Apparently, Boots can get a little gassy when stressed. I just opened the windows to air the place a little, making sure that Boots didn't attempt to escape. Then, I proceeded to do the regular stuff: change the water, top up her dry food, and then went to lounge on the couch. This time, Boots didn't join me. Instead, she stood across the room from me and just stared. For the whole time I was there, she just stared, her piercing green eyes never blinking. I felt the need to end my evening short, so at 5 minutes after 10, I bid Boots adieu, and left. The whole way home, I kept thinking of the eerie feeling of Boots and me sitting in the darkness, her, staring me down, and me trying, and failing, to read. I wanted to check with my friend, but I didn't know how to put it in words. "Your cat is creepy and stinks" just sounded like a terrible thing to say to a pet owner. The next night I got to the house, the place was completely dark, even though I always left the light in the staircase leading from the garage to upstairs, as well as the hallway light upstairs on. My first thought was that the fuse box tripped, but when I flipped the light switch, it worked just fine. Strange, I thought. Not minding it too much, I went upstairs and tended to the cat's business. I also opened the windows, as the sulfur smell persisted. This time, Boots did not greet me at the door. Instead, she was on the opposite side of the house, at the bottom of the stairs that led to the attic. "Bootsy, dinner," I called at her, but she just stared back. "Boots, come here," I tried again, walking towards her. As I started approaching her, Boots made her way up towards the attic. I didn't feel the need to follow her. "All right, you know where your food is. You'll find me on the couch," I yelled from the bottom of the stairs. The house also felt unnaturally cold. I went to check the thermostat, and sure enough, it dropped a few degrees. I texted my friend, who just told me not to worry about it. I shrugged and went to the bedroom to look for a thicker blanket or duvet for myself in her wardrobe. As I was snooping around, I heard something right above me. My heart stopped. It sounded like tiny footsteps. Then, I remembered that it was probably in the attic, and that's Boots walking around. Maybe chasing a rat or two. I know cats are supposed to be fantastic at being quiet and light on their feet, but Boots was a bit on the heavy side, and well, cats these days just don't have the same instincts as before, I assumed. After finding a proper duvet, I made myself a hot tea and cuddled with a book on the couch. About 20 minutes later, Boots came back downstairs, moving around the couch. "Come on, silly goose, I'm sorry I called you a stinky poo," I said, looking at her. As if on command, she jumped up, and I noticed something in her mouth. "What's that, Bootsy?" I asked her, trying to get closer to her. "What do you have there?" Now, I know you all cat owners anticipated what's coming next, but I did not expect it. Boots came slowly closer, and as I stretched out my hand, she placed a dead rat in it. I couldn't tell what it was at first, but the instant the realization hit me, I yelped so loudly and shuddered so violently, that I yeeted the rat all the way across the room. Lo and behold, the little shit wasn't dead, just stunned. The moment it hit the floor, it snapped awake and bolted. Boots followed in its tracks, but this time, the rat was too fast and the cat couldn't quite catch it. It seemed like there was a rat hole in the kitchen somewhere, and it managed to make its great escape. At least for now. I texted my friend the whole incident, suggesting that she might want to look for the hole and cover it up. Again, she replied telling me simply not to worry about it. Well, if she wasn't concerned, I sure wouldn't be. In the meantime, Boots proceeded to eat her wet food, and I went back to my book. After dinner, she came back to the couch and cuddled at my feet. The sulfur smell did not seem to leave her. 3 more days and Mommy's home, I told her, feeling bad for how stressful this must be for her to make her so gassy. She turned around and looked at me with her piercing green eyes, and just then I heard some more footsteps above us. Boots got startled and her pupils dilated to the point the green in her eyes was a mere thin outline for the black pupils. Freaking rats, I told myself. But I knew better. Those were too heavy to be rat footsteps. I felt a strong urge to get out and I checked the time. "Oh my, it's almost 12, Bootsy. I must leave you," I said to her, grabbing my things in a rush. As I was walking towards the stairs that lead to the garage, I could hear the stomping tracing my steps from above, so I rushed for the door, feeling immensely relieved once outside. The next night I contemplated whether I should be going or not for a long time. But I could not go. It didn't seem fair neither to the cat nor to my friend whom I'd promised. So I decided to reach a compromise with myself, go, feed the cat, clean the litter, replace the water, and leave. Then, On Saturday, I could afford to go during daytime, and maybe that would feel less eerie, and I could play with her for a longer time, to make up for this day. So I did exactly that. Or attempted to, at least. I got there, Boots was waiting for me, like the first few nights. "Hi baby girl," I said as she rubbed herself against my legs and purred. "I'm sorry, but this will be a short visit." This time, the footsteps started very early into my visit. "Get in, feed cat, get out," I told myself. Stomp, stomp, I could hear above me as I was preparing Boots' dinner. My fingers were shaking and I could feel my pulse increasing. Stomp stomp. "Here you go," I said, placing the food bowl down and trying my hardest to ignore whatever was going on in the attic. I went to the bathroom to clean the litter, and the footsteps followed above me. Stomp stomp. I went back to the kitchen to check if Boots had finished her food and to replace her water, but this time, the footprints didn't follow. Instead, they seemed to be going in the opposite direction. Towards the stairs. This couldn't be good. My brain was trying to get me to move towards the stairs that lead to the garage, but my gut feeling was telling me to look for salt. Stomp stomp, I could hear still, further in the distance. I started opening cupboards and searching frantically for anything, plain salt, salt and pepper shaker, bag of salt, anything. I found a Himalayan salt grinder and started grinding it on the counter. God, I hoped it would be good enough. The stomping stopped. I, too, stopped grinding and held my breath so that I wouldn't disturb the stillness and soundlessness that fell upon the house. Creak creak. I shuddered. The steps were coming down the stairs, I had no doubt about it. I dragged whatever salt I could grind in my palm and made a run for the stairs, keeping my eyes closed at all times. As I reached the door and fumbled to find the doorknob in between squints, I noticed that the lights started flickering vigorously. The footsteps were now making their way down the hallway, behind me. I started praying and throwing salt over my shoulder. I realized that I didn't know the words to Our Father in English, and started crying as I fumbled to remember. Then, I started praying in Latin. I knew a little Latin since high school and surprisingly enough, it came naturally to me. Pater noster, qui es in caelis. Sanctifister nomen tuum. Stomp stomp. Adveniat regnum tuum. Fiat voluntas tua, sicut in caelo et in terra. Stomp stomp, I could hear them picking up the pace, running at me. Panem nostrum quotidianum de nobis hodie. Et dimitti nobis debita nostra. Stomp stomp, and then they stopped right behind me. Sicut et nos dimitimus debitoribus nostris. Et ni nos inducas in tentationem. I could feel cold breath down my neck. I could hear faint whispering that I couldn't understand. A witch's cackle in the distance. Sed libera nos malo. Amen. I yelled, finishing my prayer and throwing all the salt I had left behind me. The whispering stopped. The footsteps stopped. The laughter stopped. The house reverted to its natural state of quietness. Every now and then I could hear a car driving by, I could see the headlights gently lighting up the room. I was certain whatever was behind me had vanished. But I never turned around, I never looked. I opened the door to the basement/garage, went downstairs, punched in the garage code, and got outside. Once outside, I ran across the street. I contemplated running all the way home, but I glanced over my shoulder to the house. It seemed fine, dark, quiet. I started sobbing as I called my friend. She didn't reply. I texted her, but still nothing. I stopped going to the house. I figured Boots would only be alone for 2 days at this point, and I left her plenty of dry food. I was too scared of what could happen next. I would just explain it all to my friend, and if she didn't understand, then tough luck. I knew my friend was to land on Sunday at 7 p.m., so I went to the airport and waited for her. "What are you doing here?" she said as soon as she walked through the arrival gates. "Well, I figured you'd need a drive home. Plus, I need to tell you something," I said, relaying the whole story and showing her the photos I'd taken, even the ones I'd sent to her before. She listened quietly, and when I was done, she stopped dead in her tracks, looked me in the eyes, and grabbed my hands. "Do you think I can stay with you tonight?" she asked softly. "What?" I asked, genuinely confused. "You don't want to see if your cat is okay?" "Andy, these pictures are undeniably from my house, but I don't have a cat," she said, showing me her phone. Our last conversation on her phone was her thanking me for coming to the party, months ago.